When you get started with game design, there's so many different things you need to learn, and it can feel a bit confusing and overwhelming as to know what to do next and how to proceed. From coming up with ideas, to making prototypes, to playtesting, it can feel like there's so much to do, and not only can it be hard to know where to start, but it can be hard to actually get anything done at all. In this video, I want to talk about one of the things that helped me most when I was starting out in game design, to get better and to progress with my games. It might seem like a small thing, but it makes a huge difference. What is that thing? Deadlines. Hi, I'm Matthew Dunstan. I'm a full-time game designer based in Australia, and to date I've had over 60 games published all around the world. On this channel I like to talk about all things game design, including what it's like being a full-time game designer in the industry, and tips and tricks to help you in your own designing journey. I'm going to keep today's video short and sharp and to the point. I want to talk about deadlines and how important they are, especially when you're starting out as a game designer. I was thinking the other day that one of the really hard things about being a game designer, in fact being any creative professional, is that you always have to balance doing a range of tasks that ask different things of you. Some tasks that are given to you by other people, such as publishers for instance, usually have some deadline attached that publisher is going to set for you. In some ways it's much easier to work on these tasks because you're given a time frame, you know when you have to have that task done by. But so many other tasks that you have to do as a game designer come from within, come from things that you want to do yourself that don't really intrinsically have any deadline. From coming up with new game ideas, to making prototypes, to thinking about how you'll iterate a game, when you might playtest it, working on graphic design, working on rules documents. The whole timeline of making a game is really up to you, the designer. And when you start out, often game design is just a hobby. You've got other things you've got to do. You've got a job, you might have a family or friends that are going to take up a lot of time. And game design has to fit in that little bit of time you have left over. And when you combine these two things, lack of deadlines and lack of time, it can be really easy to leave games on the shelf, to not work on things regularly. And sometimes you'll find that game that you're working on 2 months ago hasn't moved forward at all. And at that point, it can be easy to feel despondent and give up altogether. So my advice is simple. Set deadlines for yourself, even if none exist already. When I was starting out, one of the easiest ways to have a recurring deadline was attending a weekly playtesting meetup. And whether you have a weekly or monthly meetup, and whether it's in person or virtual, as long as you have some regular playtesting meetup, it acts as a wonderful deadline and incentive to work on your game, iterate it to get it to a new version that's playable for that playtesting session. But even if you don't have a regular playtesting session, there are other ways that you can set deadlines for yourself. For example, there are some Facebook groups, such as Tabletop Game Designers Australia or the Board Game Design Lab community, that have weekly posts where you can share your progress or what you're working on. And you could set yourself a deadline that every week you're going to have something new to be able to post to those threads on those Facebook pages. And not only is it a great encouragement for you to work on your game every week, it also is a great way to get feedback from other members of the community that will give you even more confidence to keep going with your game. Another type of deadline that was particularly useful to me early in my career were board game design competitions. I've talked on this channel a lot about the Cardboard Edison Award, which is a fantastic game design competition, but there's a number of other competitions all around the world that you can enter your design in. And all these competitions have submission dates where you have to have your game ready by in order for it to be considered for the award for that year. So you can sit down and do some research about these different awards, and you can put them in your calendar and use them as deadlines to try and get the game you're working on finished, or at least good enough to submit. I would thoroughly recommend entering competitions. I think they're a fantastic way of encouraging you to finish a design, which I think is one of the hardest things to do when you're starting out in game design. And it definitely helped me. It helped me finish my very first game design, which went on to become my first published game, Relic Runners. I entered in the Europa Ludi competition, which was a joint competition between Spain and France, which doesn't exist anymore sadly. But having that as a deadline to submit the game to encouraged me to do the hard work at the end of that game design process to develop it and get it ready to submit. I should say also with competition entries, don't be too worried if you feel like your game isn't good enough, or it's not as perfect as you would like it to be, or you would love to have a bit more time to work on it. I would always encourage you to submit the game, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not 100% done, because you'll get so much out of being part of that competition. Not only having the deadline to actually finish the game, but all the feedback that you'll get as being a part of it. I'll link an earlier video where I talk about submitting your game to a game design contest and some things you want to think about with that entry, which you might find helpful. Also, if you're fortunate enough to be able to go to a particular fair or convention in order to pitch your game to publishers, that can work as a fantastic deadline to get games ready too. When I was starting out in game design, I was lucky enough to be able to go to Essen Spiel every year, And that happened in October. I knew the date a year in advance. It was always a fantastic encouragement for me to get multiple games finished because I was going to have such a great chance to show it to so many publishers on that particular date. It also forces you to do all the jobs you don't normally want to do, like writing rules or fixing the graphic design to make a prototype look presentable and easy to play, so it can be really useful for that. And of course you need to do these tasks in order to submit your game to a game design competition as well. But really, even though I've talked about lots of different things that can give you deadlines as a game designer in this video, you can set your own deadlines however you want. I would just encourage you to actually set some deadlines. Generally, I wouldn't try to make a deadline more than a month away from where you currently are at, because I find, and I think a lot of game designers are the same, the more time you give yourself to do something, the more time you'll waste before you inevitably do it in the last few days before that deadline. So make that deadline a little bit closer to you, and you'll use your time more efficiently. The last thing I want to talk about, which is related to deadlines, is having groups or people that can hold you accountable in your game design process. Even if you don't have a regular game design group in your area, there are lots of groups online where you can find other designers who might be in the same stage as you, and you can act as accountability buddies for each other. Maybe you set up the idea that you're going to email each other every Sunday with whatever you've done on that game in that past week. Even just knowing that you're going to have to write that email on Sunday night could potentially encourage you to work on the game when otherwise you might not have done anything. This will help get you into the regularity of doing game design every week potentially, and also give you the chance to both share and receive encouragement from your accountability partner. It can often be a lonely thing doing game design by yourself, and having one other person in the trenches with you can make all the difference. So what deadlines have you found useful in your own game design journey to this point? Please share them in the comments below, and perhaps someone else will read it and be able to use it to help themselves. Also, if you want to use my videos as a deadline to try and get something done every week and leave your progress in the comments below, that's perfectly fine as well. I try to release a new video on Monday every week, so use that as your deadline if you want. But until next time, thanks very much for watching, and all the best with your game designs. Bye.